I look back on women's service in the military, and it goes back to the Revolution War. You know, think about it. It goes back that far. Women have served and continue to serve. But, you know, some of the statistics I do want to point out that I thought was interesting. Again, women started serving in 1775 to 1783. The first woman served in combat in 1782 or 82 to 83, disguised herself as a male, and when she got wounded, they discovered she was a female, and they gave her an honorable discharge. But not until 2016 did they say women really could be in combat, in a combat role. And you go through all the history to every war. The Navy didn't accept females until like the end of World War II, 1946, I believe, is when they started to let women to enlist in the Navy. And it was always in a non-combat role. And I was talking to a newscast reporter earlier, and I said, you know, when I was in Iraq, there was no lines, there was no definition of what you could do and what you can do. I said I served right alongside the women. And let me tell you, they were a lot braver than some of the men, and they did a great mission. And you know what? There was no defiance of saying, well, you're in a non-combat role, you can't be in combat. They carried on just like everyone else. But, you know, being a father of 2 daughters, and really seeing what women have to go through, especially in today's movement, to watch women in the military not only struggle for respect, but not only struggle to be recognized, not only struggle to achieve the next rank, you know, these are all barriers that have been against them. Well, women can't do that, or they shouldn't do that. And you had that segment, and you still do with some of the, I don't want to say the old guard, but kind of with the old guard, some of the people that are still there, you still have that. It's a lot better. You know, I can tell you that from my over 25 years in the New York Army National Guard when I first started to what it is today. But you still hear it every now and then. Oh, why is a woman in charge? Oh, why you know, why is, you know, who's she, you know? But they have done great things. And it's for, you know, ordinary, I don't like to say ordinary citizens to look up, but to see what these women have done, to get over that hurdle in life, which we call hurdles in life, because to get over that roadblock, to really to achieve what they have with everything against them. It's not what everyone feels. And when you put that uniform on, you are one.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I just want to thank our county exec, Daniel McCoy, who himself is in the service, for acknowledging our people today and putting this program on too. I think it's very important. I just want to start out by saying that today, as I stand here, I want to say to our women, and to you in the audience too, that minority women have always responded when there was a crisis or a need. So we want you to know that we acknowledge all minority women that might be present here today who are in uniform, those that are in the audience and not present, because you are the strength of our success. And you represent the patchwork and the quilt of diversity, which is America, which is race, creed, color, or ethnicity. So before we go any further, I want you all to acknowledge these women up here. So I'm indeed honored to join County Exec Dan McCoy today and our female military veterans. And we're going to be discussing African Americans in times of war, which is part of Albany County's ongoing celebration of Black History Month. When we talk about the history of Black women in the United States military, I believe we start by acknowledging that they have faced both race and gender discrimination. But nevertheless, they persisted to rise above the prejudices and play enormous roles in defending America's freedom and their own dignity as well. Too often, however, their contributions have gone unrecognized and unrewarded. During the Civil War, Black women provided important support by nursing injured Union and Confederate soldiers back to health, cooking and feeding the troops, and producing wartime supplies from their hometowns. As an example, Harriet Tubman, she was a runaway slave from Maryland. She worked from the Union Army as a nurse a cook, and a spy. And as we know, she ran the Great Underground Railroad. You may not know that Tubman also recruited a group of former slaves to serve as scouts by hunting for rebel camps and reporting on the movement of Confederate troops. Harriet Tubman would later become a leader in the abolitionist movement. It was during World War I that many black nurses enrolled in the American Red Cross, and as the war escalated, they gained entry into the Army Nurses Corps. Black women also were among female volunteers for the Army and the YMCA who helped soldiers and sailors overseas. While racial discrimination persisted after World War II, affirmative action and changing racial policies opened new doors for black women. And black women took their places in the war zones during the Korean War and Vietnam Wars. So American women overcame extreme prejudice over the years and demonstrated that they were not only fit to serve, but could excel in combat. In the late 2015, the Pentagon announced that women can serve in frontline combat posts. So again, thank you to all here who overcame obstacles and served their country with honor. As I move forward, I just want to also state that I am a mother of a female who is a veteran of the Navy. Her daughter is serving right now in the Air Force. When my daughter first went into the service, I really wasn't afraid. But at that time, there were some things that had gone on in the country. Of course, we remember in 2001 when they bombed the towers in New York City. I had to serve myself in New Jersey and New York as people came in and we had to tell them what their benefits were. And the one thing that I recognized, I knew that we were going to war in one form or another. There was no doubt in anybody's mind that was in the room that kept serving the hundreds of people that just kept coming in to find out what their benefits were for their people. And so my daughter wound up going to Saudi Arabia. She served in Operation Desert Storm. And one of the things that bothered me, I had to wind up with her son because her husband also had to go too. And as I looked around church one Sunday morning, I saw some other mothers with their grandchildren that they had to take. When my granddaughter left just about, 9 months ago to serve in Kuwait, and I realized that my daughter was a little nervous about her daughter being away. I wound up with my great-grandson taking care of him. I was happy to have him, but I can say he was a handful. But it reminded me of what I had to do for her when I had to take my grandson.
I've been in the New York Army National Guard for the last 31 years. I've rose to the rank of Command Sergeant Major as a female in the recruiting battalion. Right now, I serve the entire New York State. The recruiters in the recruiting battalion, I supervise them and make sure that everyone is being treated fairly. I've been married for the last 20 years with 3 children, 2 adults. My youngest is 16 years old, and unfortunately, neither one of them will be joining the military because of health reasons, but they will be using the education benefits. I've deployed to Saudi Arabia.
I've served, I've had several MOSs. I was an 88 biker truck driver. I was finance, I was a human resource specialist. And as an officer, I hold a couple skills as well. I'm an HR specialist. I'm a public affairs officer, believe it or not. And I also am a logistician. I have never deployed overseas, but I have supported a lot of operation in the country in support of contingency operation. My current full-time position is I'm the Education Services Officer for the entire state of New York for the National Guard. Education is huge right now, so I like the job that I do because education benefits was one of the reasons why I joined the National Guard. And it has helped me to obtain my educational goals as high as a master's.
So once I graduated from college in Alabama, I became commissioned as a second lieutenant, and then I have now made it to the rank of captain. I pinned captain in 2015. I am a human resource officer at the Albany Recruiting Battalion, right here off of Watervliet. I'm just the admin officer, so I don't have to go out and do all the recruiting and all that stuff, but it's a really tough job. I've been deployed twice. My first deployment was in 2012 after I was fresh out of college. I mean, I had just graduated a year prior and showed up to my unit in January and was in Afghanistan by April. So I spent 12 months there as an executive officer. That's pretty much just the colonel's right-hand man, or the company commander's right-hand man. And then my second deployment, I was the adjutant and the admin officer to the colonel at that time. And now I'm stationed here. I just reported up here this past July.
Two of you mentioned education. And so I guess my first question to you is why? Why you joined the service?
So I joined the service, like I mentioned before, for education benefits. At the time I enlisted, I was pursuing my bachelor's degree, and I ran out of financial aid, so I needed assistance to help me to pay for college. So the National Guard was there. It was an opportunity that was presented to me, and I said, you know what the heck, let's do it. So I did. I walked in her office with my sister. It was my sister, my cousin, and myself. I think she enlisted like 4 of us. My brother-in-law, yep, she enlisted like 4 of us that same day. And the minute I went through that process, I went to school, I registered for school, and I got my tuition assistance from the National Guard. So education was very important to me because I know what I wanted in life. I wanted to pursue. There's a lot of things that I wanted to do, and education was the way forward. That's what I had to do first in order to be able to accomplish my goals in life. Now, upon joining the Guard, a lot of stuff happened at that time. 9/11 happened. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of high tempo at that point in time with deployments, and it required the National Guard to be activated on full force. So what it did was, a lot of times I was taken out of school to support, like I said, a lot of in the state mission. So we had to go down to the 9/11 site to help out with that. There was a couple other operations that we did, like SAD, that's currently still going on now. We supported a lot of that. I supported a lot of that. So it's made me start to look at the Guard differently. I was like, oh my God, my job is really important. Being in the National Guard is really important because, yes, I joined for education benefits, but the thought of helping other people was so rewarding because I was helping other people being a member of the National Guard.
National Guard paid for my tuition. I was able to achieve my master's degree in business, so the education benefit is absolutely there. What I want to let everyone know is that being in the military, you still have a life. I was able to raise 3 children and still have a full-time job in the New York Army National Guard. I was one of them that the minute an emergency start, I wanted to be there. I just wanted to help. And that's what you bring to people that want to serve. The stigma out there that the military is not for female is absolutely wrong. It's hard being in the military as a female, but it's a achievable goal, and it's a reward. And to sit and hear my mother, who was a single parent, who raised 3 children, and she's always bragging about her daughter, who is the Command Sergeant Major of the New York Army National Guard, it's such rewarding.
The college that I went to in Alabama was an HBCU, which is a historically black college and university. So joining the military was my first time being a minority. Mm-hmm. At this college that I went to, there were not very many other ethnicities, and I'm an other, if you probably can't tell. I'm actually mixed. My mom is Irish and my father is African American. So in that community that I grew up in, everybody there was primarily African American. So joining the military was my first time being an other. And so my very first deployment, I learned pretty quickly about the rules of fraternization, inappropriate relationships, and favoritism. And what I mean by I learned that pretty quickly was I was the only female officer, and everything I'm saying, I was the only in all the categories. So I was the only female, I was the only officer, and I was the only African American female officer of anything I just listed. So I was in an aviation unit. So all the officers there were pilots or aviators, and all the enlisted were MI analysts. They pulled the feeds from the pilots. So all the officers were Caucasian males that went to West Point. And then there was me, the little, the African American second lieutenant that went to a black college. So whenever there were events where they would try to have camaraderie, I never really felt, I don't want to say I didn't feel welcomed, because everyone there was pretty open and friendly. But I think it's human nature for people to just kind of merge with people that they're familiar with, or people that they look like, or someone that they have something in common. So after attending one event and just seeing all the pilots in the corner talking about fixed wing aviation, and then it's just me, I went to a black college, I kind of stopped going to the events after that. And then I had my boss who pulled me aside and asked me, was there any reason that I stopped coming? Do I feel excluded or anything of the sort? And I told him the truth. I said, to be honest, I do kind of feel not included, just because nobody there really has anything in common with me. Nobody really made it a point to reach out and say, well, let's bring her into the corner. I probably could have reached out myself and just, put myself into the conversation. But, it's just a little difficult when nobody there really looks like you. Nobody has any relations to anything that you could potentially discuss. And if I did put myself into the conversation, it wasn't going to stop and change because of what I wanted to talk about. They were still going to want to talk about their pilot stuff. So within that same organization, the example I mentioned about learning about fraternization and all that, the Army is pretty strict on keeping the supervisory role and the subordinate role lines pretty black and white. And so when you're in Afghanistan, they have a very strict battle buddy program. So if you're going to go anywhere, you need to have somebody with you. It's very important that you're not walking around the FOB, the forward operating base, or the area, because there's a lot of Afghan locals. The bases were getting attacked all the time. The bases were receiving indirect fire from the enemy. So they want you to have somebody with you at all times. And so I was faced with the dilemma of, well, who's going to be my battle buddy? Because I can't pick an enlisted soldier, because officers and enlisted, could kind of set a precedence. And how the saying goes, what's the perception is reality. They have a little saying about that. And as unfortunate as it is, people talk and people like to make rumors. And so if you're seen with one person too often, people start whispering. So I was pulled to the side maybe once or twice, saying, we've seen you walking around with this individual this often. You got to be careful. You don't want anyone to start thinking of anything.
My father, my father's grandfather, he was a white man. And both of my grandparents were mulattoes. And so you couldn't tell my father from a white man. And so when he joined the service, and I only know this story because he told it. When he joined the service, they put him in with a white platoon. And he realized that he was perceived as passing. And he told them, I'm not white, I'm black. And they moved him into a black platoon. And he had problems even within that platoon because they looked at him as being white. Now, you would think people coming from the South would have a real clear understanding of what it was like. But even in the South, people were prejudiced against each other also. But I can't say that my father went on and he had a very successful stay in the military. But my father drove the ammo trucks because those were the details that they gave to the black soldiers, and that's what he passed along to me too.
31 years ago, I joined the Army Reserve, and I was in a reserve unit, and the first sergeant of that unit, he had five to six females in that unit. And he went up there and he clearly stated, I don't want to know that you guys are here. You shouldn't even be here. Go do what you have to do. So I took it up on myself, and I found it was a deuce and a half. It's a stick shift deuce and a half, and I was determined to learn to drive a stick shift. So I taught myself how to drive a stick shift when I went into work. He didn't want me to work, so I found something to do. The discrimination is still there, but you have to prove yourself. I felt that my mother prepared me for the position that I'm in now, because I was a middle child, and I was always fighting to be recognized.
When I just went to the unit, you already noticed, everybody has their own little groups and everything. So that's just how it is. So it's everywhere. So when we got to the unit, we went to the range. It was a range weekend where we went to qualify with the weapon. And normally after you're done firing the weapon, you're supposed to go out and you're supposed to police up the brass. That's the little shells that come from the ammo once you shoot them. So once everybody qualifies, so once you go and you qualify with your weapon, you would sit on the bleachers, wait for everybody to be done, and then everybody would go out and everybody would police up the brass. So at this point in time, everybody had finished, and then one of the sergeant, he was Hispanic, he came up to a group of us on the bench, and he pointed us out. He's like, you, come here. So we were like, okay, sergeant. So he said, you need to go and you need to go police up those brass. So he picked out maybe like about 4 or 5 of us. We were all African Americans. So we were like, okay, is everybody done qualifying? He's like, yes, but I need you to go and I need you 5 or 6 people to go pick up the brass. So we're like, okay, no problem. Is everybody else gonna be here? Because the more people we have doing it, the quicker we can finish and we can get up out of there. So then he started screaming at us. He's like, no, I told you to do it and you to do it. You're going to do it. Don't question me, whatever. So we were like, wait a minute, what's going on? Why are we the only ones picking up the brass and not everybody else? So we eventually complained to the commander about it. And we were like, you know what? We feel like we were being singled out because standard is if everybody is finished, we all do the work, we all in it, it's one team. Why are we the only ones that are doing the work? Why are the others not doing the work? And by others, I mean the other females that were with us and males were Hispanic, but they weren't called out to pick up the brass. So that was the one incident of discrimination that I faced. We did speak up about it because when we went and we informed the commander about it, the commander eventually had us talk to the sergeant and say, you know what? You can't be doing that. You all have to work together. But it kind of went south from that point on because now he picked on us because we went and we spoke up. And that's what I noticed from being in the military. Don't just take what they dish out. If you speak up for yourself and you see something that's wrong and you say something about it, chances are they won't really pick on you as much as before. They may dislike you. They may give you the crappiest job to do. But always do it to the best of your ability.
To our 2 captains and Command Sergeant Major, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule and to really show what the military has meant to you, and to the 2 dreamers, thank you, because it's what's going on in today's environment. It really shows to the world, and I think people were surprised. I was watching some of the audience. I like to sit on the side, like taking notes, but you see people's expressions when you're talking. When you said that you can join the military without being a citizen, and people don't realize that. When I went overseas, I want to say there was, out of our whole company, there was only 4 of us that were American citizens, and it's just the fact of life. You can come here, and Wanda brought up a good point. My daughter gave me a book for Christmas, and it's been a tough book to read because it's about people that served in the military that got discharged and then put back in their own countries. And the only time they can return here is because they have the rights. If they were honorably discharged, they have the rights to be buried in our national cemeteries, but they do not have the rights to come back as a citizen. So it's pretty scary. And I do appreciate all your stories and insights and how far we've come. And I was thinking when I was over there, I'm like, no wonder I got sleep apnea and I don't sleep. I remember when I was in Iraq, I made the mistake to the women in my squad. I said, look, And this is sad. I go, if you have to go to the bathroom, wake me up, I'll walk you to the bathroom. You had to do that in a combat zone. And people will say, well, because of the enemy? And I'm like, not really because of the enemy. And it was a mile walk to the latrine and a mile back from our tents. And trust me, I didn't want to walk a mile in a good day, let alone at 2 in the morning. And men had an easier way of taking care of things than women. And they took me up on it. And they would wake me up, they go, come on, Sergeant, I have to go. I'm like, oh. And the one said, I'm not reactioning to specialists like them. She goes, you were so mean. I'm like, I'm sorry, it was 2:30 in the morning. I was very, I got up, didn't I? They go, but you weren't happy. But unfortunately, that's what you had to do. And it's sad. But I do, again, want to thank you for your experience and what you shared with the audience here. And hopefully for the women here in the audience, and when this gets out to other people, that they truly can see you can be as successful as you want and do whatever you want in life.